Hello everybody, this is Alexander Wexler of Wexler Consulting, and we're here in the July release of the Wexler Consulting Cloud News. Hopefully this has been a good month for you, and maybe you've even found time to get some vacation. The Azure teams did not. They cranked out quite a few new products, and we're going to shed light on this in our Azure Talk section for July 2020. And the main topic of this Cloud News episode is Azure Time Series Insights, which has been released in its Generation 2, so it's the second version, and we're going to have a closer look at that. So what happened in Azure during the last month? One thing that I find especially interesting is the ability to protect Windows Virtual Desktop with Azure Security Center, and that's an absolutely great feature. If you're running a Windows Virtual Desktop host pool somewhere in Azure, you have, of course, nearly the same threats as you might face in your data center, meaning that you need to protect your network, your deployment configuration. You, of course, also need to protect the session host OS. And of course, you need to have a special focus on application security. The great thing now is that Azure Security Center is able to help support and protect you by doing secure configuration assessment and secure scoring. So if you have configured something, Azure Security Center tells you, oh, that was a good idea, or here are points which could be improved. Then they have a vulnerability assessment and host level detection, which enables you to see if there's something going wrong on a dedicated host. In addition to that, Security Center also provides agentless cloud network segmentation as well as detection of any incidents. And this is of course great because you have the complete control of your system. Additionally, Security Center also provides file integrity monitoring, just-in-time virtual machine access, as well as adaptive application controls. So that's a pretty sophisticated and comprehensive security solution in the cloud you are able to leverage to protect your Windows Virtual Desktop host systems. And I think this is very beneficial because it takes a lot of the workload off of your security team, and your security team is able to implement the measures and the fixes while Microsoft is doing the heavy lifting, doing the security operations and attack protections in the background at the cloud data centers. Another great preview that was released is Azure IoT Connector for FHIR. Well, what is FHIR, you may ask yourself? That's Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. And behind that lies the infrastructure to provide patient data into the field for your doctors, nurses, first responders, for example, in a pretty fast, reliable, and secure way. And that's really important because it can save lives. Some of the interesting aspects here are that the IoT connector supports the conversion of biometric data, such as blood glucose, heart rate, and so on, from connected devices into FHIR resources. It also supports scalability and real-time data processing. And of course, it has a seamless integration in Azure IoT solutions as well as Stream Analytics. In addition to that, it is certified according to the ISO 27001:2013 standard. And this is really important because the medical vertical market is a highly regulated market, and due to this, you're really bound to use certified solutions. As an architect, I especially like the release of the Azure Well-Architected Framework, and the Azure Well-Architected Framework provides guidance as well as reference materials, sample in the Azure Architecture Center. It's built on 5 pillars, which are cost management, operational excellence, performance, reliability, as well as security. As already stated, the Azure Architecture Center is a place to look for the material, and there's a complete new learning path for the Azure Well-Architected Framework on Microsoft Learn. As an architect, I really like this, so have a look at this information to get some inspiration for your next projects and solutions. Enterprises quite often have a lot of services And this comes with a challenge to make these services discoverable to provide the best synergies and avoid duplicate developments, which is not always easy in a large corporation, especially if you're offering services based on Kubernetes. The HashiCorp Consul service comes as a software as a service solution, which helps you on Azure, but maintained by HashiCorp as a partner offering to help you out with service discovery in your company without having to operate the service yourself, which can be quite demanding in larger setups. So that's a very interesting features for enterprises, definitely worth a look. Last but not least, in our Azure Talk section, OpenID Connect support for app servers and functions. OpenID Connect is an authentication protocol built on top of OAuth 2.0 that can be used for secure user sign-in managed by different identity providers. So you could have, for example, Google as well as Facebook as your identity provider for your application if you want to. The nice thing is you can configure your app to use one or more of these different OpenID identity providers, and by doing this allow your customers or users to sign in with the account they prefer. This is great to have that feature, and for some use cases this is certainly a good addition, but I would take this with a grain of salt because in many use cases it makes sense to use Azure Active Directory B2C and use the AAD B2C functionality in the background to authenticate with the different OpenID Connect identity providers. The approach with Azure ID B2C gives you much more flexibility looking at the user journey as well as the user management for your application. But as always, it depends on the use case, so it is very good to have these features because there are certainly use cases out there where you do not want to have an additional management layer for authentication and identity, such as Azure Active Directory B2C in between. So now let's have a look at this episode's focus topic, which is Azure Time Series Insights Generation 2. Looking at IoT solutions, it's always a challenge what to do with the data you're ingressing into your system. So your devices are sending data towards IoT Hub, and then what are you going to do with it? You could store it in a database, you could use stream analytics jobs, you can use storage options such as blob storage, data lakes, document DB, SQL Server DBs, and so on. But this always comes with quite some development effort. What if we would have a platform already offering a lot of prefabricated infrastructure to handle those data ingressed into our system? And that's exactly what Time Series Insights Generation 2 is providing us. It's a fully managed IoT analytics platform, which is serverless, which means you don't have to hassle with any installations, operations, and so on. The platform is fully operated by Microsoft. It has an elastic pricing model with enterprise scale, which is also good. You can start small, pay only a few euro cents or whatever currency you're using, and then scale up if your solution gets successful to the performance required, avoiding the typical and feared bottlenecks you can experience in IoT solutions. Also great is that from the beginning you have a web UI, an application which is called Time Series Explorer, as well as APIs and SDKs which help you to implement the solution. And this is great because you can use the web UI from the beginning to control the data flowing in, and you can also control the transformation and computation made on the data while you're developing your own APIs as well as your own data flow. Time Series Insight provides multi-layered storage. Of course, we have managed warm storage, which allows sub-second queries for the most recent data, for example. And we have either Azure Data Lake, or you can also bring your own cold storage to archive your data, which still then can be queried in large queries, which come back in a few seconds. So that's still pretty good, I would say. In addition to that, Time Series Insight provide a Power BI connector if you have more sophisticated display requirements, for example. And of course, Power BI is also able to satisfy sophisticated reporting requirements. What I found especially interesting is that you're able to enrich the incoming data with contextual information. For example, if you have a device and you know it is located in a special building, but you do not know normally by just the device ID and the building ID where this building is located. Time Series Insights provides you the means to provide a so-called time series model, which adds those informations. For example, the country is United States, the state is Washington, for example, giving more contextual information to the raw data you have received from your device. It gets even more interesting with the ability to integrate your incoming data with Azure Digital Twins, which opens up the door to a complete new world of possibilities. Of course, you can use the Azure Digital Twins to get a real-time view on your system or solution. But in addition to that, Digital Twins enable you to simulate and test a lot of different scenarios or use cases for your solution. And that's a very important asset in any project I've made until now. There are more connectors planned for release, more data connectors, for example, into Apache Spark, into Azure Databricks, which by the way is built on Apache Spark. And there will also be a new connector in the pipe for Synapse. And the number of these connectors will grow over time, of course. What else happened here at Wexel Consulting? Well, we have our newest courses out in the wild. For example, the Azure IoT Telemetry's Jumpstart course, which has been recently accompanied by the OPC Unified Architecture Getting Started course. Highly recommended, of course. The newest posts in July were about the Azure IoT Learning Month, where Microsoft has been supplying a lot of new learning materials for developers to build Azure IoT solutions. And also quite interesting, at least I really liked it, there's a private endpoint now for Azure SignalR, for example in Azure VNet available to be used in your solution. As always, you find all the links and information in the accompanying blog post. That's it for this month's episode. I hope you find the information useful. And if there are any questions, please leave a message below. Thanks a lot and goodbye from Alexander Wexler.